I picked this apartment for one reason. Top floor, nothing above it. No neighbors stomping around at midnight. No pipes banging through someone else's floor into my ceiling. Just roof and open sky over my head. That was the whole selling point. So when I woke up to 3 slow footsteps crossing the ceiling directly over my bed, my first thought wasn't fear. It was confusion. There was nothing up there to make that sound. I lay in the dark, staring at blank white drywall, running the math over and over like it would change the answer. Top floor, no unit above me, nothing but tar paper and vents and open sky. The footsteps didn't care about my math. 3 slow steps, a long scrape, like something heavy dragged an inch at a time, then nothing. I told myself it was the building. Old pipes, ductwork settling, a raccoon on the roof. I almost believed it until the footsteps came back the next night and the night after that, always late. Always right above my pillow. Sometimes they crossed the whole ceiling, slow and even. Sometimes they stopped dead over my head and just waited. Like they knew I was awake, listening back. After 2 weeks, I stopped trying to sleep through it and started recording instead. That was the night everything changed. That night the footsteps were different, slower, deliberate, like whoever or whatever was up there had all the time in the world. They crossed from one side of the room to the other and stopped directly above me. Silence. I almost drifted off. Then, so quiet I told myself I'd imagined it, I heard a voice. I didn't think much of it until the next morning, sitting at my kitchen table with the recording in my headphones and coffee going cold in front of me. Underneath the hum of the building, there it was. A man's voice, soft. Close, too close. Closer than a foot of drywall should allow. Don't look up. I ripped the headphones off like they'd shocked me. I sat there a long time, not touching the coffee, just staring at my phone like it might say something else if I waited long enough. I played it 3 more times. Same voice, same 2 words. I deleted the file that afternoon. I still don't know why. It felt like the same instinct that stops you from saying a name out loud when you're alone in the dark, like acknowledging it made it more real, not less. That night, I moved to the couch, telling myself the distance would help. It didn't. 3 nights later, the footsteps followed me. Above the hallway, above the kitchen, then directly over the couch. 1 soft tap, 2, 3. The exact same rhythm as that first night over my bed, like it wanted me to know it could find me anywhere in this apartment. That's when I called the building manager. Mike showed up 20 minutes later. I expected him to tell me it was pipes. Instead, he stood in my living room and just listened. Nothing happened. Then, he looked at me and asked, "Where do you usually hear it?" I pointed at the bedroom. We checked the roof first. Empty. No loose boards, no equipment, nothing that could explain footsteps or a voice. Back inside, Mike ran his hands slowly along the bedroom ceiling until his fingers stopped near the light fixture. "There," he said. I couldn't see anything until he pointed out the hairline crack running through the paint. He went to his truck for a screwdriver, worked it into the seam, and pulled. A piece of drywall broke away into darkness. Behind it was a narrow wooden cavity, maybe 2 feet high, running the length of the apartment. Old beams, decades of dust, air that smelled like it hadn't moved since the building was built, and footprints in that dust, bare, small, human, fresh enough that the edges were still sharp. We heard the next footstep at the same moment, inside the cavity, moving toward the opening. Step, pause, step, closer each time. Then it stopped, right on the other side of the hole Mike had made. The drywall beside it bulged outward. 5 fingers pushed slowly through the gap, not grabbing, not violent, testing, flexing once like they were feeling for the edges of the opening, measuring how wide it was. Then they withdrew. Mike grabbed my arm. "Outside. Now." We didn't discuss it. Police searched the roof, the cavity, every panel and vent they could reach. No person, no animal. No way in or out that made physical sense The space was barely wide enough to crawl through and connected to nothing. What they found between the beams was worse than an empty space would have been. A wallet holding a driver's license for a woman who, records showed, had lived in this exact apartment 9 years before me. A pair of glasses. A water-stained photograph of a child on a porch that didn't belong to this building. A small toy car, most of its paint worn away. And my spare key. The one I'd lost 3 weeks before any of this started. Nobody could explain how a key lost inside my own apartment ended up sealed behind a wall with no way in. Nobody could explain the woman's wallet either. When Mike looked her up, her file just said, relocated, with no forwarding address. The same year the crawlspace would have been drywalled shut. I moved out that weekend. I didn't ask for my deposit back. I didn't hear from Mike for 6 months. When he called, it was to tell me they'd finally sealed the cavity for good. Not opened it, not repaired it, just filled it and closed it, so nothing could get in or out again. Contractor took photos before we closed it up. He said, "Thought you'd want to know. The footprints, they weren't heading toward your old apartment anymore. They were headed away. Whatever left them was already gone." For a second, I felt something like relief. Mike went quiet. The kind of quiet where you can tell someone's deciding whether to actually say the next part. "There was something else," he said. "Footprints on the floor of your old bedroom, not in the cavity on the floor, starting right beside where your bed used to be, leading straight to the wall, then straight up it." I asked how long they'd been there. "Nobody knows," he said. "Floor was clean before you moved in. If they'd always been there, somebody would have noticed." Before he hung up, he asked if I'd ever figured out where I lost that key. I told him no. "Neither did we," he said. "I've lived in 3 apartments since then. Ground floor, every time. I still lock my bedroom door at night, out of habit, more than anything. Not because I think something's coming through the ceiling again. I keep thinking about that first night, before the crack, before the cavity, before I knew to be afraid of anything at all. I heard footsteps. I looked up. I never once thought to look down. I've driven strangers through this city for 6 years. I thought I'd gotten used to every kind of silence, every kind of stare in the rearview mirror. Then a passenger filed a complaint saying I never picked him up. The problem was, I remembered driving him home. I remembered his face. I remembered his voice. I remembered exactly where I dropped him the porch light, the cracked front step, the way he said thank you like he meant it. And the next morning, I found his wallet sitting on my back seat, like he'd never left it. That's when I checked the dash cam, and that's when I found out he'd been sitting in my car for almost an hour, before I had any memory of meeting him at all. I drove nights back then, better money, empty roads, and most people just wanted to get home without talking. A little after 1 a.m, a ride request came through. Short trip, residential address on the east side. Passenger name, Daniel. A man in a dark jacket was already waiting at the curb when I pulled up. He got in and closed the door softly. "Evening," I said. He nodded. Nothing else. We drove in silence. No music, no conversation. He sat perfectly still, hands folded in his lap, looking out the window. Every few minutes, I checked the mirror. His face was always turned away. 15 minutes later, I dropped him outside a small house with one porch light on. Before he got out, he looked at me through the mirror. Just for a second. "Thank you for taking me home," he said. Then he walked toward the house. I watched him reach the steps. Then I drove away. I didn't think about him again until the next afternoon. That's when the company sent me a complaint. The passenger claimed I never showed up. He said he'd waited 20 minutes and canceled the ride. He wanted a refund. He wanted me reported. I stared at the message, because I knew that was impossible. I had picked him up. I had driven him home. So I went outside to my car to prove it to myself, and found his wallet on the back seat. It was black leather. The driver's license inside read, Daniel R. Hale. The photograph matched the man I'd driven. The address matched the house where I'd dropped him. I checked the dash cam. expecting it to prove I was right. It did. The footage showed Daniel getting into the car, the silent drive, the house, him walking away. Everything happened exactly as I remembered. Then I thought about the complaint. If Daniel claimed I never got into the car, why was his wallet here? So I rewound the footage, past the pickup, past when I remembered starting my shift. At 10:17 p.m., the back door opened. Daniel got in. Same dark jacket, same careful movement, same seat. He sat down and folded his hands in his lap. I stared at the screen. The car was parked in my usual lot. The engine was off. The driver's seat was empty. According to the company's records, I didn't clock in until 11:03. I checked the timestamp again. 10:17. I hadn't even started work. I watched Daniel sit there for 24 minutes. He never moved, never checked his phone, never looked toward the front seat. At 10:41, the footage glitched for half a second. When the image came back, the back seat was empty. I replayed it. Same thing. Daniel appeared, sat there, then disappeared. I checked the car's trip history. Nothing was logged at 10:17. No engine start, no trip, no driver activity. But the camera had recorded him inside my car, waiting for a shift that hadn't started yet. Then I noticed something else. When Daniel opened the back door at 10:17, the interior light never came on. It should have. I checked other recordings. Every time a door opened, the light came on. Every time, except for Daniel. I called the number attached to the complaint. Disconnected. I drove to the house where I dropped him. The windows were dark. Nobody answered. There were unopened envelopes sticking out of the mailbox. I searched the name instead. Daniel Hale had been reported missing 11 months earlier. He was last seen leaving a bar a few blocks from where I'd picked him up that night. There had been searches, posters, news reports, but no confirmed sighting since. I stared at his photograph. Same face, same man, the same man who had been sitting behind me that night. I went back to my car and sat there for a long time. I couldn't make the pieces fit. The complaint said he never got into my car. The dashcam showed him getting into my car at 10:17. And I remembered picking him up at 1:07. 3 different versions of the same night. Only one of them could be real. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I watched the footage again. But this time, I didn't watch Daniel. I watched myself. At 11:03, I got into the driver's seat, started the car, checked my phone, then looked into the rearview mirror and smiled. Just a small, automatic smile. The kind of smile you give someone you already know is sitting behind you. I froze. I rewound it, played it again. Same thing. I turned up the audio. My own voice came through the speakers. Quiet, almost casual. "Morning, Daniel." I stopped the video. I had no memory of saying that. None. As far as I remembered, I met Daniel for the first time at 1:07. But the footage showed me greeting him by name nearly 2 hours earlier, not asking who he was, not reacting to him. Greeting him like I already knew him, like I'd already spoken to him, like 1:07 wasn't the beginning of anything. It was simply the first part I could remember. I quit driving that week. I never gave the company the real reason. I couldn't explain it without sounding insane. I sold the car a month later and told myself that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Not exactly. I still take rides sometimes, in the back seat instead of the front. And every so often, right as the driver pulls away from the curb, I catch myself already thanking them for taking me home before we've gone a single block. I don't know why I say it that early. I just know it feels like I'm finishing a sentence I started somewhere else. The first photograph showed me standing on my own front porch. The second showed me opening my front door. The third showed me standing inside the abandoned house across the street. I had never been inside that house. The photograph was dated tomorrow. The house had been empty for almost 4 years. 2 stories, gray siding, windows boarded with plywood, grass splitting the driveway. I'd stopped noticing it months ago. Then one Tuesday, taking out the trash, I looked up and saw someone standing in the upstairs window. A man, completely still, watching. I counted 10 seconds before the light went out. The officer who checked the house came back, shaking his head. Nobody's inside. I saw someone in that window. Could have been a reflection. He glanced at the dark house one more time. Keep your doors locked. The figure was back the next night. Same window, same stillness, except this time he wasn't watching the street. He was watching my house. 3 nights after that, the front door of the abandoned house stood open. I crossed the street. The front door was still open. I stepped inside. No furniture, no power. Dust thick enough to hold footprints, mine going in, nobody else's coming out. Taped beneath the upstairs window was the first photograph. My house, my car in the driveway, me on the porch. The date on the back read yesterday. Behind it were more, dozens. Me leaving for work, me carrying groceries, me asleep on my own couch, shot from an angle that could only have come from inside my living room. Someone hadn't just been watching my house from across the street. They'd been inside it, taking pictures of me while I slept, and somehow also standing in this empty room the whole time. I should have left. Instead, near the bottom of the stack, I found one more. My front door, standing open. Me on the step outside it. Same shirt, same jeans I had on right now. The date on the back, tomorrow morning, 8:14 a.m. I took it with me. I didn't sleep. At 8:13 the next morning, I stood in my kitchen, watching the clock, telling myself the photograph was fake, a trick, a prop, anything but real. 8:14 came. My front door opened by itself. I'd locked it the night before. I'd checked twice. I walked into the hallway and stared at the open door, at the exact angle the photograph had shown, at the exact time. Across the street, the upstairs window held the figure again, and this time I understood, with total certainty, that whatever this was didn't need to sneak into my house anymore. It had already been inside. It was just letting me catch up. That's when I found the last photograph, waiting on my porch. It showed me exactly as I was standing now on the porch, holding a photograph, looking across the street at the house. The date on the back read, "Today." I turned it over to look at the image itself more carefully. In the reflection of my own front window, faint but there, stood a second shape behind me. Someone in my house, looking out. I spun around. Nobody was on the porch with me. Nobody was behind the glass. But when I looked back down at the photograph, the reflection was still in it, and I realized what had been bothering me since the first photo. Every picture in that stack had been taken from a height and angle no one standing across the street could manage, through my own front window, from inside my own hallway, from directly behind my own shoulder while I slept. Whoever was taking these photographs wasn't watching me from the house across the street. They were taking them from places I hadn't been yet. I called the police one more time. They searched the house top to bottom and found it exactly as empty as the first time. No camera, no prints besides mine. The stack I'd found beneath the window was gone. The only photograph I still had was the one I'd taken home. That night, someone knocked. When I opened the door, no one was there. Only a photograph on the mat. My living room, my couch, me, asleep, taken from inside that same night while I was standing at the front door reading it. On the back, 4 words. You're already inside. I moved out the next morning. I didn't finish packing. For 6 months, nothing happened. Then an envelope arrived at my new apartment. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. My new house, taken from across the street. My car in the driveway. The upstairs curtains open. I was standing in that window. The date on the back read tomorrow. I looked up from the photo. Across the street from my actual house stood another old, empty building I'd never paid attention to. Its upstairs window was dark. Then the light came on. I looked back down at the photograph in my hands, and for the first time, the shape in the window wasn't looking out at the street. It was looking directly at the camera. Underneath the date, one line, in the same handwriting as before: "Tomorrow you stop looking." If you enjoyed these stories, follow for more unsettling tales. And if you want to hear the next one, make sure you're subscribed.